What do we have here? We have a Yeti mug with coffee in it. Cold coffee, actually, to keep it cold. Hi, welcome to Brew. This is where indie developers send their games and I do my best to give feedback on their game design. If you're new here, this is the second channel. We have a main channel called Games Over Coffee. This is Games Over More Coffee. There's a link to it in the description. My name is Devon, and today we're looking at a game called Moonicorn's Cookie Quest, which is a game that was developed by some people, submitted by Johannes Gross. I am terrible at pronouncing names here. So Moonicorn's Cookie Quest, what is this? This is an interesting submission here, because usually when I find something that looks like this, what I imagine is that this game was kind of like a first time game, because it doesn't look very well polished. And to my surprise, this game was very well put together. I hate to say that it took me by surprise, because I feel like I'm saying something bad about the developer, but I'm not. It's just this is what I was expecting. I was expecting a game that wasn't very well put together, and I got one that was very well put together. I first played this game on my live stream. The game is pretty short. Here's some example footage. This is me playing the game, and this is what it looks like. So as you can see, the game is a single screen auto run kind of thing. So usually in auto runner being where your avatar is automatically running. Usually in those kinds of games, you're presented with the challenge of needing to get over obstacles. Something like Temple Run, or whatever it's called. When you are playing the game, you're seeing things as they come forward. Your gameplay becomes reactionary, right? It's more action based. And Moonicorn is different because it's puzzle based. It's a single screen and your avatar is automatically running, and you have to time your jumps properly. So it gives a very different feel to what you would consider an automatic runner. I wouldn't call this an auto runner. I'd call this like a puzzle game. It's very literally using, automatically running. So I just figured I'd talk about that. The very first level is pretty awesome. This whole thing is actually very awesome because it's teaching. This whole thing is teaching. Let's take a look at the teaching process here. So it's very obvious right up the front. You have right there, boom, get the cookie, and boom. Okay, so now it says click to jump at the top. Actually, it doesn't say click, it just says to jump. And I think that's perfect. You don't need something that is much more than that. Boom, we understand. So what's nice about that is that the person who's playing this game, has no idea how far they can jump and what their hang time is like and anything like that. So this gap right here is the perfect amount of length for the player to understand exactly how far they can jump. And kind of how high they can jump too, because the jump that you have is fixed. It's a fixed jump that you can only jump one height. So this level tells you everything that you need to know about the jump. So that's really nice. And on the third one, we learn how to double jump, and it's very, very simple. You have these little spike things here that you got to avoid. So instead of having a chasm to jump over, you have spikes. So it's kind of teaching two things at once, your double jump and hazards. There you go. Boom, boom. So this is where we have our first gravity swap. And what's kind of strange about this, it's a little strange. So if we look at what happens here, I die because I'm very good at this game. So you automatically flip right there. So that's not, gravity is automatically flipping right here. And it seems to be that you're because this whole thing is split down the middle, we have a cookie side on one side and a cloud side on the other. It seems like the cookie side should have different rules, I guess, than the cloud side. But that's not the case. So you come over here and then it flips gravity automatically. and then you use your double jump. And I wish there was a better signifier of switching gravity, that there was something that we could understand. Oh, that's gonna switch gravity right there, but we don't get anything. This level design, I think, is really, really good. So when you get onto these platforms and you go over to the right side here, you bump into a wall and the wall makes you bounce, and it's very simple. And then the same thing happens with this wall up here, boom. So now you know that's what happens. All of it is very self-explanatory. It doesn't require much of analysis at all. Mainly what I want to talk about here is the types of levels that are presented and the reason why they're presented as such. So in these levels, they're all meant to just do one thing, and that's to teach the player exactly what to do. We already saw what the other levels did, but this one, teaches how to bounce on bugs, and then it provides a challenge for doing so. And then this one teaches that you can bounce on bugs to get to other platforms, which I thought was a really neat puzzle. And then this one teaches you that there's this little goo right here, and this little goo kind of stops you in your tracks, and you can use that. The challenges don't really start, what I would call challenges, don't really start until this level, which I think is level 15, if I'm remembering correctly. So there's 20 levels in the game, including the boss, and 14 of those levels are spent teaching the player what to do. Now, some games can have this kind of thing. I often cite Portal when it comes to very lengthy tutorials, but Portal kind of does a half, I want to say a half and half thing, because the second part of Portal, where it starts to give the player more freedom and less contrived puzzles, you could split those puzzles into their own little sections and then say that each of those little sections count as one level or one chamber, and then when you compare them side by side, there's a lot of those little chambers after the other ones. So it's really like a half and half thing. This right here, 14, that is 70%. So 70% of the game is learning how to do the mechanic. And it's just a little too much, because for me, what that means is that it feels like it's a short game now, which it is a short game, but it doesn't feel fulfilling. What creates this kind of fulfilling feeling in players whenever they, complete a puzzle, figuring out the puzzle, is the mechanic. Like, that's the thing that we want, that we crave from puzzle games, is the figuring out process. And so to design something that makes it feel good, that figuring out process, is you want to design levels that give the player enough hints, but not enough hints to tell them exactly what to do. Yeah, so 15 right here is where it starts getting, like I said, more independent thinking. This is where it starts getting less obvious. My first time playing, I was like, I don't even know what to do here. And that's a great feeling for a puzzle game, is you want to start out not understanding what's going to happen and then try to figure it out as you go. However, the amount of steps that we're taking here in order to figure it out is not that many. We see that spikes come up, and so we try double jumping to, get away from them, and we figured it out. And now the rest of the level is very simple. The complexity in these levels, and the ones that are past 15, there's at max maybe 1 or 2 steps that you have to figure out. And at that point, it doesn't really feel like the game has a whole lot to say. And so when I play this game, the mechanics are actually very good. I really like the feeling of the click. I really like the speed of the unicorn. I really like the amount of teaching that's in here too. All of that feels really good. But because the levels that take thinking don't take a whole lot of thinking, there's not much to grip onto, and it doesn't really feel like I've done anything very great. It feels like I've played a game, and then I'm like, hey, hooray, I beat it. On to the next game. It doesn't feel like anything significant, and that's good for what it is. In fact, something that I wanted to bring up was when I'm playing this game on mobile, it feels a little bit different, but it does feel more like a mobile game, like a game that's built for people to just kind of bring up, play through, and then go away. I think one of the things you could do is because we have no lives, because we just keep restarting over and over, you could play up the experimentation, and you could create a lot more complex levels that require a lot more thinking, a lot more things to do, rather than just, 2 or 3 steps for the player to figure out, and maybe even extend the levels to where you have one section that requires this certain type of thinking, and then go on to the next section of the same level that requires a different type of thinking or something like that. Like the letter V 6 times, how that game approaches its single screen things, where we have a single screen, but that's not the entire puzzle. Or you could go the route of N++, where they have, a giant puzzle and your character is just very tiny. In fact, I think this game would actually work really well zoomed out, but I think I like the way it is. I really like the way it's presented. I just think it just needs more complex puzzles, really. This whole game feels like a concept, and if that's what you're going for, then awesome. I think you're really onto something here, but as a game itself, I wouldn't pay for this game. I would play it and think, oh, hey, that's pretty cool. Let me know when you have the whole game out. This whole thing kind of reminds me of the way Portal first began. I talked about this in my video right there. The very beginning of Portal's development was about escaping a prison. And so when they started playtesting that, they gave it to audiences and said, hey, what do you think? Audiences would play it and say, hey, this is fun, but let us know, when the game starts afterwards, right? And so the developers were kind of confused and tried to figure out, well, what was it that the players weren't understanding that this was the whole game? Like, why did they consider this whole thing to be training? And they said that there was no real context to their actions. The way they made their game feel cohesive was to add some sort of context to everything. So we're not just doing everything for just no reason. We're doing something for a specific purpose. And so what they did was they added a story. They added an antagonist and then made each of the steps a step toward that antagonist. It's interesting because this game kind of reminded me of, I think just mechanically, of a game called Pony Island. And the thing about Pony Island was that the game itself is a very, very simple game. It's super simple, but it's probably one of the best games I've played. But mechanically, it's almost stupid. Like it's really stupid to play. There's not a whole lot of fun stuff to do. I mean, some of the stuff is kind of fun, but it's actually kind of monotonous. A lot of it is really monotonous. But if it wasn't for the context to the game, like the story that you're actually trying to figure out and trying to work your way through, if that wasn't in there, the game wouldn't be super boring. It would just be really dry. And it lets you know that context can just provide so much more to a game. As of right now, I'm working on my next half-calf episode that's about Celeste, and I'm talking about how theme provides some context for gameplay. It's one of the reasons why I think Celeste is like a masterpiece, because it uses theme as context. I know that Moonicorn's Cookie Quest, just from the name of it, is probably not going to be something really big and huge, but it could be if that's what you're trying to do. And if it is, then I would suggest adding some sort of context to the game to where we feel like we're working towards something. It was really fun to like have this guy here, our boss here, that looks like Cookie Monster, to like just come up out of nowhere. And I'm just like, oh, hey, it's Cookie Monster, and now we have to fight against him because we've been collecting cookies, I guess. I don't know. It was funny, but because it was like tongue-in-cheek, but it was just kind of a joke that was just there, and I'm just like, oh, that was funny. Anyway, right? If we want this to be more of a game that feels more cohesive, more like just a piece that I really want to take a bite out of, I would create some sort of context, and if maybe this monster is present throughout the whole game and we're trying to do something about it, contextualizing the gameplay with story can make the game feel really cohesive. It can make it feel, like it has that much more meat to it, without having to add a whole bunch of complexity to the game. And if you did add a bunch of complexity without any kind of context, you'd have a game like Baba Is You, where you have a really, really good puzzle game, but it might get kind of demanding the more you play it. I haven't played the whole game, so I don't know if there actually is more context to it. That would be my advice, is if you want to create something bigger without upping the complexity a whole lot, I would add context. And if you do want to add the complexity, or you could do more, or you could do both, you could add more complex levels and then add more context also. I think one thing that a lot of people don't put into the games is context around their actions. And I think that really can bring up the game, really make it rise and make it something that's really interesting and unique. I look at Pony Island when I think about context and how it matters so much. So definitely give that game a play to check out what I'm talking about. So that was Moonicorn's Cookie Quest, and the next game is called Warp Factory. It's a factory game about using portals. Thank you for submitting this game. I hope my feedback was helpful. If you're not the creator of this game and you have your own game that you'd like to see me tear apart, you can submit it using the link below. You can go to gamesover.coffee to check out all my other stuff. It's all just links to everything. Every kind of link that you want is in that link. One link for all the links. If you'd like to keep up to date with what's going on with this channel or the main channel, or if you want to talk to developers or do some playtesting, there's a Discord for Games Over Coffee. There's a link in the description. Check that out. I think that's about all I have to say for today. So I'm gonna keep drinking my coffee. It's early in the morning. Drink my coffee. So I put this game in the Games Over Coffee Discord and asked people to give some advice on some of the game design. So we got one response from Pear Tree. Boss intro was really good to show how he will attack, having the enemies on screen get hit, really like that. One other mechanic that could be interesting would be a Mario type ground pound. It would stop forward momentum, which would open up some more level design play, like having obstacles in front of the player that need to navigate through them by jumping and stomping. What I didn't like about the mobile version was that the tap, you use tap to jump. Because the jump is fixed, what I need is a binary input, meaning that I need something like a button press, but since we have a screen, when we put our finger on the screen, that usually indicates some sort of analog. When we press and hold, that means that we've grabbed onto something, and that when we drag it, we have it. So it feels like a tap probably isn't the best maneuver for a jump. Maybe a swipe would be better because that's more of a binary motion. But we know that a swipe means one thing, whereas a tap could mean several different kinds of things, because tap and hold is a big thing on phones. It's just, it feels a little empty when we tap and it just jumps. That's all.